All right. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for being here. I'm Commissioner Doug Omen, and I have the privilege of serving as your host today. So again, thank you very much for joining us here at the Iowa Fraud Fighters. Really glad you were able to join us today. I hope you will hear some really interesting information that'll put you in a position to protect both yourselves as well as the people in your community. As I mentioned, I serve as your insurance commissioner, and our responsibility in the insurance division, it includes regulating insurance, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but we also regulate investments here in the state of Iowa. And so this is my contact information. If you have questions or if you have information that involves fraud, I want you to make sure that you know how to get a hold of us and get a hold of me, because that's the best way you can help protect your neighbors, is to report fraud. So if you hear about fraud, if someone has solicited you in a fraudulent scheme, is make sure you let people know about that. My purpose today and gathering here with you, as well as Al Perales of the Attorney General's office and Kristen Griffith of our SHIP program, is to talk to you about fraud. And the reason we do that is because we have found that our responsibility to protect Iowans includes educating people about fraud. We have found that one of the best means by which to protect is to actually give you the information that you need in order to identify fraud, and then also help educate other people around you, as I said, people in your community. And so that investor education mission that we have at the Iowa Insurance Division is part of our law. That is, we regulate investments, and the way that happens is we regulate the professionals, the financial professionals that are licensed and appropriately educated and trained to offer information about investments. But we also have a responsibility to educate because it's in the statute. In fact, it's kind of interesting if you look back over the history of investor education here in the state of Iowa. It's something that the Iowa legislature gave responsibility to us for a number of years ago. They actually did something that is not entirely unusual, but certainly was forward-looking. And what they did is they included within our authority, when we prosecute violators, what we are often able to do is recover restitution for the people that were harmed. But in addition to that, we also are able to impose fines. And so in that process of imposing fines, they included this mission of investor education. So even though I know you really enjoyed your lunch, I want you to know that no Iowa tax dollars were used in order to buy your lunch. Your lunch was bought and paid for by the scammers that we prosecuted. So anyway, you can thank them for that. There's not a lot you'd want to thank a scammer for, but at least you can often say, well, they bought you lunch. So there you go. So as I mentioned, this ability that we have in order to prosecute violators, it's an important part of our mission. That is, when violators are brought to our attention through complaints, we're able to impose fines. We do through law enforcement, both local prosecutors as well as through the Attorney General's office. We're involved in putting together fraud cases that can then be prosecuted. So that's, as I said, an important part of what we do. The mission that we have, in addition to putting on events like this, which is the Iowa Fraud Fighters events, we're very involved in providing educational opportunities and tools for the children that attend school in our state. We have, through this National Theater for Children, we actually have a really valuable program that is made available to middle school teachers. So for kids that are in middle school ages, they may not really totally understand all that they need to know about fraud, but they certainly need to understand and develop a level of financial literacy and financial wellness, so they understand how it is to take care of themselves financially. And so that's required by state law, that individuals that graduate from high school, that they develop a credit, or have a credit of experience and learning in that area. So we participate in that through the National Theater for Children, as well as EverFi, which is a program available to high school students. So in addition to buying lunch, we also do a lot of really good work within the high school. Funding the Future and Save for Later and Smart Her Money are really programs that are designed to reach out to people that are in their income earning years. There are various programs that as I mentioned, we're very heavily involved in. We have Sonia is here today and is involved in our educational program as our consumer advocate. So Sonia Selmeyer is somebody that also is heavily involved throughout the state. And then, as I mentioned, here we are with Fraud Fighters. So our fraud prevention is really important that we educate, and because we have found, and the studies show, that people that are highly educated in understanding what scammers do are much better able to protect themselves. It also shows that within your community, that as people that you know, people that you talk to, if you share this information, that will have a valuable effect in preventing fraud. So we're going to go ahead and begin the program by playing a video. Some of you may have seen this video, but the video is a video of an individual who was scammed. She's a retired Iowa school teacher, and she was scammed in what we would call a Ponzi scheme. I'm going to go ahead and have the video played, and after that, I think you'll understand why I consider her to be a hero.
It was 2 postcards that came in the mail, and one of them had to do with investment, and the other one was information about Social Security. And I laid them aside, intending to order the one about Social Security. When I signed them, I signed the wrong one and shredded the one that I should have kept, and that brought somebody to my door at a later time. Well, I figured out what had happened, and I finally reluctantly did let him in. He said he would only take 15 minutes, and it lasted much longer than that, of course. They offered a really high interest rate, and about that time we sold some property, and they knew about that, and I think that's what kept them coming back and keeping in touch with me, because they knew that I was going to have some income and would have something to invest. I handed over a check for my half of the sale of farm property that was over $1 million. And I handed over, he talked me out of the annuity that I had been adding to from my paycheck from teaching for 40-some years. And he told me that we needed to get it out of the annuity, that if I didn't get it out of there, I would lose it. I always thought that people had to be pretty stupid to let it take place, but I sure got fooled, and I was well aware that things like that went on. But I think you have to watch out, because they have all kinds of charming things to say and get you off your guard. I still think about it frequently when I get in bed before I go to sleep, and I wake up in the morning, and if I'm lying there getting awake, I start thinking about it again, and I just about have to block it out of my mind, because I can ruin my whole day thinking about what could have been. I'll never be in the place I was before it happened. things are better than they were, but it'll never be the same. I don't trust people as much as I used to. I know that I won't let anybody in my front door that I don't know, whether they're wanting my money or something else, and I certainly would have a better idea of who to check with and not try to figure it out for myself when it isn't something I'm knowledgeable about. You just have to be very careful, because you can ruin the rest of your life if you aren't.
So I consider Martha Joe to be a hero because one of the things that we have found is that when people are scammed, they're embarrassed by it and they don't want to ever tell their story. They don't want to share with others what happened. And because Martha Joe is willing to do that, I consider her to be a hero. Because embarrassment is one of the things that the scammers know and will use to help keep people silent. And it's in that silence that they can continue to do harm to others. So we would encourage you to speak out about that. Speak out about scam, speak out about fraud, talk to your family members, talk to your friends about it to help educate people, because that is really, really important. Now, we also suggest you double check. Double check before you invest. And when we talk about double checking, there are a couple of things you can do. With Martha Joe's circumstance, what happened was she did not double check. And when I say double check before you invest, it means contact the Iowa Insurance Division. Talk to us about these types of things. Her circumstance is exactly one of those circumstances that had she called us, we could have helped prevent her losing over $1 million. And what I mean by that is that when she was solicited for this investment, these individuals were already under investigation by our office. There are other people that had been defrauded among Iowans, had come to us and complained about it, and we were in the midst of the investigation. Now, it was only a short time after Martha Joe was scammed that the individuals were arrested and prosecuted, and ultimately they did go to prison. But the reality is that some people would say, well, that's justice, that they went and served a significant period of time in prison. That is never justice for the victim like Martha Joe in a Ponzi scheme. Because a Ponzi scheme, the way it works is you're robbing from Peter to pay Paul, and in the circumstance here, it was robbing from Martha Joe to pay Paul. And so the people that come in at the end, there's never money left to make them whole. So that's why we say double check, double check, double check. If there's any of these investments, and all investments have to be properly reviewed and made available for filing, public filing in the state before they can be sold. If you're solicited in an investment, you need to make sure that it's gone through that registration process, whether it's done at the federal level or at the state level, because Ponzi schemes are not. Probably the most famous, the Ponzi scheme operator in recent history, because the original Ponzi scheme was by a guy named Charles Ponzi who ran it, but you know Bernie Madoff. He's an individual that did this, and people lost millions of dollars. But again, it's that same principle of bringing in new investors to pay back earlier investors some part of their investment back. Sometimes it's in the form of principal. Most of the time it's an interest payment, a dividend payment, or something that suggests there's a legitimate business operation that's supporting the ability to pay that profit back. But the reality is the only way it works is to continue to solicit new people. And so Martha Joe, like so many other Iowans, lost money in a Ponzi scheme. So that's something to certainly be aware of. And if you if you are checking with us, if you're double checking with us, you can rest assured that we can't prevent all fraud, but we can at least examine the underlying business operations to make an evaluation as to whether or not there is legitimate profit-making activity going on, which is what is necessary for there to be a return on an investment. We're also seeing a lot of these cryptocurrency type investments, and those are things that, again, that where the scammers will use what's commonly going on, and not all cryptocurrency is a scam, although it's highly speculative and is subject to a lot of fluctuation. Certainly individuals that invest in cryptocurrency need to understand exactly what's going on and understand the high risk that goes with it. But this is something that scammers will use. They use current activity. Certain things that you hear and read about, our advice is double check. In other words, make sure that every cryptocurrency investment has also gone through that process of being examined and evaluated to make sure that there's real legitimate profit occurring because of business activity. We also are seeing in today's world the things that scammers do is they'll use the current activities. There was a time when oil and gas investments were producing income and return for people, and still can, but the scammers have now moved into other areas like green energy, where you hear opportunities and they'll solicit you. So again, we just encourage you to double check. The financial advisor that's making the recommendation should be properly licensed and registered in the state of Iowa. You can check with the Iowa Insurance Division to make sure that's happening, as well as make sure the underlying investment is something that's real, that it's legitimate. Really important to understand what it is that's going on. Precious metals, in times of economic volatility in the stock market, if you've got a 401k or a retirement account, you can see things that are going on. Doesn't make anybody happy, but the reality is be aware that scammers will use the current economic circumstances to commit fraud and to persuade you, as was explained by Martha Jo, to get your confidence, to get you to trust, to say all sorts of nice things in order to persuade you to invest. Doesn't mean that precious metals is a bad investment. If it's done properly and right, it's properly registered, it can be an appropriate thing. One recent case that we had involving precious metals is Metals Inc. And this was a case in which came to our attention through complaints. We started to work with the Federal Trade Commission and with some federal investigators, as well as other states, worked together in order to bring a case in order to enjoin this company from continuing its operation. But the reality is like so many other scams, investors lost lots of money. The total solicitation was over $185 million. And the reality is that when we were able to take action in order to stop the activity, a very small portion of that money was able to be retrieved. One of the other things we'll see at the local level, which you should be aware of, is what we call promissory note scams. These are scams that often are perpetrated in local communities, and it starts with the idea that a local business person has an opportunity for people within that community to invest. They'll print up what they call promissory notes. There's kind of a technical reason why they think that they can get by with using promissory notes that don't require registration. But the reality is that they need to be reviewed. And if you're smart as an investor, you would want them to be reviewed, again, because of the fact that in any of these investment opportunities, it's helpful to know that the promoter, that is the person putting it together, has put together the appropriate business plans, and it's been reviewed, and they are following the rules when it comes to investments. So this is one of those individuals that used promissory notes. It was just to the southwest of Des Moines in a small community down there. He was an individual that began to solicit investments among people that he knew. Oftentimes we'll see promissory notes used within local groups, the local, Lions Club, church groups, what we call affinity fraud, where individuals within a small community come together and put their trust in one of the individuals within that community, and unfortunately it can result in a lot of lost investment. The affinity frauds have grown outside of what we have seen over the years in communities into social media. And oftentimes, people over the years with social media, if you've gotten on Facebook or you participate in that kind of activity, it's the way you can kind of get connected with people, share common interests with people. But I've actually been kind of surprised with the amount of information people are willing to put into that social media content or world, because the reality is, unless you really are very careful about putting in place privacy blocks, you're making that information and those photographs available to everybody, including scammers around the world. And so they will use this sort of new affinity fraud method of, they're going to look at they'll go through Facebook, they'll figure out who you are, figure out what story they can make up in order to be your close friend or someone who knew people who you knew. And then because of the fact that you've put out this information, they can make a really compelling, interesting, convincing story about why you should trust them. So that's what's happening. Again, whether it's in Facebook or the other social media, when you put that information out there, just know you're publicizing or you're advertising to the scammers as well. And we have seen this in the way scammers are able to solicit investments. So we know scams come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. People will often ask me, what are the new scams? But the reality is that some of the scams that we see today are just a reinvention of scams that we saw a year ago or 2 years ago, because so many times the same tricks work over and over again. Martha Jo talked about people saying charming things. Scammers know that. I mean, in the business of sales, actually developing some shared interest with your customers is an important part of selling. Well, the scammers use that kind of way to charm people, to get you to trust them, to understand them. That's why they call it the confidence game, right? The con man, the con game. It's based on that idea of developing confidence. Unfortunately, we also see intimidation and bullying used. And in my work over the years, when I was in the business of helping prosecute people, I would listen to tape recording after tape recording of sales presentations where the scammers, once they got enough information to get you to the point where you're ready to fall prey to their scam, they'll then bully the older Iowan, and I mean bully and intimidate and threaten in order to get an older Iowan to do something otherwise they would not want to do. And in fact, otherwise they'll instill fear to make you, put you in a position. So again, it's important to understand these tricks that they use, but they use excitement, fear, and love in order to do that. The main purpose, again, if you're dealing with someone you don't know, and I mean don't know because they're not in your community and you just don't know them, you're dealing with someone via the phone or through internet or however, you've got to be very cynical, because these scammers are really, really good at what they do. And the reality is any one of us can be victim to fraud. I often think about my own mom. My mom didn't lose money in investments, but I will share she became a regular victim to charity frauds. She was a pretty patriotic individual, and after 9/11, she was filled with that emotion of trying to help veterans. And so the scammers knew that. And so when I would sit down with her every year and we'd kind of go through, her charitable giving when I helped her do tax work, she would have this long list of people, scammers that she had sent money to. Now, it wasn't a lot of money, but the reality is that the scammers knew what was going to appeal to my mom. That was patriotism and being a caring individual. And they used that as a way to get money from her. So again, anybody can be a victim of fraud. But the data also shows that when individuals that are scamming, they do target older Iowans. And there are a number of reasons for that. But we do know that oftentimes they are targeted into the segment of our population that we would describe as older Iowans. Again, one of the reasons is oftentimes people that are older, they're alone. And so the scammers know that. For my mom was a widow at that time, and they knew, I mean, they didn't know her son was an assistant attorney general. They just knew my dad wasn't around anymore, and my mom wanted to talk to people. So they knew that, and they could identify people like that. But those people that live alone are more often subjected to fraud. And the reason why we do Iowa Fraud Fighters is so that you understand and appreciate that, because there are people within your community that are alone, that need a friend. Talking with them and trying to help, again, it's sort of that issue of privacy. You don't want to get in their business, right? But the reality is that if they're alone, they are much more likely to be targeted for fraud. We also know that people that have been defrauded are defrauded again and again. And again, that's because the scammers know they'll sell names, they'll pass names around. For my mom, you know, it could have been the same telemarketing room that was calling under multiple different names, but the reality is more likely my mom's name got on a list and people kept calling her. And she passed in her 80s, but the reality is things start to change within people. For my mom, it was more of an issue of some of her historical omens, cynicism, that is what made her the person that she was. As she got older, she started to lose a little bit of that edge. It's just something that happened with my mom, but the scammers know that, and they'll keep coming back to the same place. So that's why it's so important that we talk to one another about this, share in those experiences, and help better educate one another. These are the types of things you can actually look for when people are being victimized. And this comes from information that again is shown by data, but people that are being financially exploited, you start to see it within the way they carry themselves. If someone like Martha Jo, it had a physical toll on her after she lost that investment. And her family understood what had happened, but it really can have an impact on people. And so again, I put this information up there just so you can understand that when someone is victimized in a small scam, you may not notice it, but big scams, you will see things as it starts to take its toll. So these are the things you can kind of keep in mind, and these are things you probably have heard before, but they really are worth repeating today. And the first is, when it comes to making an investment decision, nothing has to be decided that day. We hear reports all the time, and our cases will show that scammers will try to persuade the investor that they have to make a decision today. That just isn't, in the world of investment, that's just not true. You never have to decide today. If someone's pushing you to make a decision today, you should just walk away. The other thing that is really important is that you fully understand the investment. So many times we see scammers, they'll promote something that sounds new and exciting, and the reality is the investor doesn't understand it. We say double check, double check, double check. That is, make sure that the Iowa Insurance Division understands the investment. But even for you personally and for your friends personally, you should understand the investment, because if you don't understand the investment, you're really not in a position to ask the tough questions you should be able to ask about a promoter. And I know some investors, they just want to hand over the responsibility of understanding it to their advisor. And if the advisor is appropriately registered and trustworthy individual, I can understand why you would want to make that decision. My advice is still understand your investments, because if you do, you'll be in a much better position to identify fraud. This next advice is report it. If you think that you're being solicited or you've been targeted as a victim, report it, because as with Martha Jo, so often, even if you don't fall prey to it, by reporting it to us, we're then in a position to help protect your neighbor. Because scammers, they don't run scams to just steal money from one investor. It's always about trying to find multiple numbers of investors. So if you are victimized, or if you've even been targeted, please report it. So we say stop, call, confirm, stop, call, confirm. That is, stop, don't make the decision today. Call us, call a trusted friend, talk to a trusted advisor, confirm, that is, double check, make sure what you're doing is the right, prudent, appropriate decision. And as we've said before, don't ever do it alone. So in addition to talking about investments, I just want to touch briefly on some of the other decisions that people, when they're older, start to make. I mean, you may want to appoint someone as give them power of attorney. Those are options. Again, as you advance, you may want to hand over that responsibility. My advice to you on appointing a power of attorney is that's probably one of the most important employment decisions you will ever make, because if you're appointing someone else and giving them the responsibility to make your financial decisions, they may have a legal duty to act in your best interest, but your responsibility is to make sure that the person you're giving that responsibility to actually can be trusted to act in your best interest. So again, make sure that when you go through that process that you make a wise decision for that appointment. Power of attorney does involve creating documents. That often will involve talking to an attorney, but there are some, in addition to that, some state resources that are available. Even if you have appointed someone else with power of attorney, it's good to have another second voice, a second opinion. So if you're involved in that, find someone else that can help in that process if you're handing over some of those financial responsibilities. You should, even now, if you haven't appointed someone, check your account statements, your monthly bank statements, just to make sure monies aren't moving inappropriately. Check your credit card statements to make sure there aren't unauthorized charges that you should be concerned about. But it's just really important to do all of those things. And as we've said before, and I'll repeat it again, is don't be alone in this stuff. Find people within your family structures or communities that can help you. These are some of the resources that are available. You can talk to your local area Agency on Aging or the Iowa Office of Public Guardian if you're going about that process of making a decision to appoint someone through power of attorney. It's really important to do that carefully. As I said, there's also, you can appoint a conservator or someone else to be involved in that. That also involves legal documents, and we encourage you to just act carefully. There is more information about those topics in the handbook that's been provided to you, but if you have additional questions about that, again, there are other folks here that will be happy to answer those questions. So with that, I'm now going to hand over the microphone and the clicker to Al Perales. Al is with the Iowa Attorney General's Office and serves in consumer protection. So please join me in welcoming Al Perales.
All right, I hope everybody can hear me. Good afternoon. My name is Al Perales. I'm with the Iowa Attorney General's Office. I thought I'd start out with something funny. It's always good to laugh, isn't it? Unfortunately, there was this plane that was about ready to crash. There were 4 passengers, but only 3 parachutes. The first passenger was a heart surgeon, and he said, "My patients need me." So he grabbed the first parachute and jumped off. The second passenger was a rocket scientist, and he said, "My country needs me. I'm one of the smartest men in the world." So he grabbed the second parachute and jumped off. The third passenger was Pope John Paul, And he told the fourth passenger, a 10-year-old Boy Scout, he said, "Son, I'm old and frail. I don't have much time left. You go ahead and take that last parachute." And the 10-year-old Boy Scout responded, "Sir, that's okay. The smartest man in the world just took off with my backpack." And one of the reasons that we love to tell that little joke is because we can't say it enough. And one of the themes that you'll hear today is to double check, double check, double check. Double check before you say yes over the phone, or double check before you give that vital information, financial information over the phone, or before you sign on that dotted line, you double check, or before you click on that urgent text saying there's something wrong with your account. Again, we can't say it enough. Double check, double check, double check. One of the reasons you're here today is we're here to deputize all of you as an Iowa fraud fighter. And we hope that today, my hope is that you learn something. But more importantly, my hope is that you take some of the information home and you share it with a loved one. You share it with a family member. Because as I'm sure we can all raise our hands that we've all received a scam call probably within the last 2 days, couple days, maybe even today. It's happening. And the scammers are alive and well. We live in a scam culture. And although technology has been good, it's been good for the scammers too. And although when I was growing up, something would happen on the other side of the world, I remember thinking, oh, that's way over there. I don't have to worry about it. And anymore, when something happens on the other side of the world, it affects us. And it's amazing to me how someone wakes up every day to lie, cheat, and steal on the other side of the world. And they're focused on folks just like you. They know that over 80% of financial wealth and over 50% of discretionary income is owned by folks just like you. And they'd like nothing more than to get their hands on that money. I wish that you could sit in my chair for 1 week. 1 week. You would have talked to a gal from DeWitt who lost $50,000 just like that. She was told she won $8 million in a Mercedes-Benz. Or you would have talked to a gentleman from Grinnell. He was 82 years old, and he got called that his grandson was in trouble. And he got scared, and he quickly grabbed the money from his bank. And do you know the scammer came right to his door, knocked on the door, and he handed the $8,000 over to the scammer? Or you would have talked to a gal in Northeast Iowa who fell for a romance scam and thought she was in love. Did she lose $200,000? No. $500,000? No. $600,000? No. $800,000? No. She lost over $1 million to a romance scam. In fact, just today, on the way here, I talked to a gal from Story City. She's 88 years old. And she got a call that there was something wrong with her computer. And it turned into something else. It turned in that her account at Wells Fargo was in trouble. And they connected her with a Wells Fargo investigator. And they said, "We think someone here that's working for us is trying to steal your money. So we don't want you to tell anybody. We want you to keep it a secret." And she followed their directions. She believed them. And she lost over $200,000 just yesterday. It's amazing how strong these scams are. It's amazing how they make them feel so real. And scammers, although they're focused on all ages, they're focused on older Iowans. You have time and money. You're available. You've worked hard all your life. You have that nest egg that they'd like to get their hands on. Another reason that makes you a target is you're Iowa nice. I believe with all my heart that people in Iowa are slow to be assertive. They're understanding. They give the benefit of the doubt. And all those are good characteristics to have. A scammer will use it against you. Another reason why we find that older Iowans are targets, unfortunately, is loneliness. There are many Iowans out there that are isolated, that are widowed. And believe me, that is the perfect recipe for a scammer. You can imagine someone welcoming a call or welcoming some good news or just wanting to talk to somebody because they don't get visited as much. And scammers know that. So they focus on the isolated. Another reason why older Iowans are targets. You guys come from a great generation. A generation where your handshake meant something, your word meant something. Truth and faith were pinnacles of life. And what a scammer will try to do is they'll try to connect with you and try to find something in common with you. Whether that be religion, whether that be a hobby, or whether that be a political party. They'll try to find something that they can connect with you. Just really quick, up in northwest Iowa, we have a family, a couple that lost $450,000 to an investment scam. And do you know how the scammer got in the door? Do you know how he got into their life? Through a game called Words with Friends on her phone. And Words with Friends is like Scrabble, but it allows you to text people, hey, good job. Oh, that was a great move. Hey, great game. And then the scammer started some conversation. Oh, I see you're from Iowa. Oh, I have family in Iowa. And broke the ice and started talking to them. And then introduced this investment where they could make a lot of money. And they lost $450,000. Another reason why we find older Iowans are targets. Many times we find they don't even say anything. They don't report it. Sometimes we find out they don't even know they've been scammed. But more often than not, we find that there are many older Iowans that get scammed and they don't tell anybody because they're embarrassed. Because they don't want to tell their sons or daughters in fear of the son or daughter saying, Dad, Mom, I'm going to take your phone away, or I'm going to have to be on your bank account. It's kind of scary to lose a little bit of your autonomy. So a lot of times it doesn't get reported, making older Iowans a little bit more of a target. But there's another thing that's important that I want to cover that makes older Iowans a target. As we get older, we're all aging, we're all changing. And one of the things that change is our frontal lobe. Our frontal lobe is where all our decision making is made. We decide whether to do this or do that, or to go forward with this or not. And as we get older, it atrophies, it gets weaker. And studies in Iowa City by Professor Dr. Denberg, she found that as we get older, our frontal lobe atrophies and it gets weaker. And we are more susceptible as we get older to believe something that's not true. But it's very important to know that anybody, no matter your upbringing, your financial background, your cultural background, your religious background, anyone can be a victim of fraud. I've got people that say, you know, Al, I could catch a fraud. I could pick it out. Just have them come at me. And I think you need to be very careful of doing that. Because I'm telling you, these scams feel so real. They feel so valid. And I can't tell you how many times people have said, Al, I don't know why I didn't question it. I don't know why I just kept going forward and doing everything they told me. It's because these scams are so strong and they're so good. Many people ask me, why do scams work? Why do they work? I mean, when you think about it, scammers understand human nature. I mean, I'm thinking everyone would raise their hand on this one. How many of us would love to win the lotto? I think we all would. I can't tell you how many times that I have purchased a lotto ticket and put it on my visor, and for that week, I just kind of wait. And that week I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, that could be a winner. What would I do with it? Oh, I'd buy this and do that. It brings a little joy to me. Scammers know that. And how many of us, when we're in trouble, if we have a parking ticket, a speeding ticket, how many of us want to get away from it? We want to take care of it and put it behind us. I think we all do. Scammers know that. And how many of us, if there's someone in trouble, someone in need, how many of us would want to lend a helping hand or to be there for someone? I think we all would. So what a scammer does is that they want to create a situation that they can introduce to you. And that scam is supposed to do one thing. They want to do one thing. They want to raise your emotions. They want to raise your emotions of excitement. You've won the lotto. You've been approved for a grant. You've won a brand new car. Or fear. We're the IRS. You're in trouble. There's something wrong with your account. You need to act now. Or they bring a situation that pulls at your heartstrings or your emotion of concern. Grandma, Grandpa, I need your help. Can you help me? I need your help right now. Or a romance scam. Hey, I love you. We have a future together. By the way, can you help me? I'm in need. The scammer will create a situation that seems so real, but it's not. I love using the acronym TIP, T-I-P. If there's one thing that you remember TIP. That scams come in all shapes and sizes, from a knock on a door, a phone call, a text, an email, a postcard. But there's, again, one thing that they want to do. They want to bring the T, a threat. And that threat, they want to raise your emotions. The I is for immediacy. With every scam, there will always be a sense of urgency that you have to do something now. And if you don't do something now, there's going to be consequences. And the P, payment. The scam will always involve money. It will always involve money where you have no defenses. They're going to ask for a gift card. They're going to ask you to send cash or to wire money. In the situation with this gal from Story City, she wired the $200,000 to different locations. Scams are real. Just really quickly, some of the scams that we're seeing out there. The Amazon scam. The Amazon scams where they call you. You get a text or or they call you on the phone. But what they want to do is they want to raise your emotion of concern. We all know we don't want to pay for anything that we didn't order, right? We don't. What do we want to do? We want to fix it. Hey, I didn't order this. Take this off my account. Scammer knows that. So they'll introduce an email or a phone call that you've purchased a TV for $3,400 and it's being shipped to Arizona. And on that email, guess what? They have a 1-800 number customer service number. What are you supposed to do? Oh, I better call them. Hey, I didn't order this. Oh, your account's been hacked. Oh, we just got another order that you put just now. You didn't do it? Oh, we got to fix this. And then the scam goes on. And this scam is so good because we all know that when we receive a phone call, our guard is up, right? We're looking, hey, who is this? But the scammer knows if you're making the call and you think it's Amazon and you're thinking you're talking to a legit company, your guard is down. And they know that. And many of these scams, they turn it into a problem with your purchase to your account's been hacked. We had a gal in Iowa City just last week, lost $31,000. And at first it was an Amazon scam that she had a purchase that she didn't make. And then they said, hey, your social security number's been being used. We need to forward you to the FTC. And then the FTC forwarded her to the DEA. And just made up this story that her social security number was being used and she needed to take care of it and she needed to prove her innocence and she needed to send her money from her savings because they wanted to protect it. And it was all protected through the government. And the government, after it was all said and done, would send a check to her. But of course that didn't happen. She lost $31,000. The Amazon scam is alive and well. It's one of the number one scams right now. Another one is the Facebook grant scam, where you get a call, you get a message from a friend from Facebook that you haven't talked to in a long time. And he'll say something like this, hey Betty, how you doing? How's your family? Hope you're well. Have you heard the good news? Hi Betty, yeah, I've been doing good. Hope your family's well. What's the good news? Well, you won't believe this, but I just got approved for this grant. I got this post-COVID grant for $60,000. And I talked to them, and I don't have to pay it back. And when I was talking to Mr. Johnson, he told me that you're on the list. The money's available to you too. All you got to do is call this number. And this scam is so good because people believe that they're getting the information from someone that they trust, someone that they know. But no, the scammer broke into their friend's account and sent messages to everybody on their list. So be careful of that one. Another one that's alive and well right now is the virus. You get a call, you get a text, it comes up on your screen that there's something wrong with your computer and that you need to fix it now. Again, something to raise your emotions. So there's something wrong with my computer. Oh no, I got to call this number, Microsoft. And again, the scam goes from there. The jury duty scam. The jury duty scam is where you call, it'll say Tama County Sheriff's Department on there. And it'll say, hello, this is Sheriff so-and-so. And you were scheduled for jury duty last week and you failed to show up. And because you failed to show up, there's a fine. Sense of urgency. If you don't pay now, there's going to be a warrant out for your arrest. Okay? We can all pick out the threat, the immediacy, and they're asking for money. It's a strong scam. Of course, the romance scam. The romance scam, in my opinion, is one of the most evilest scams out there because it deals with matters of the heart. It deals with love and hope and all these good things. Everyone in this room knows what it feels like to fall in love. Everyone in this room knows what it feels to get those butterflies in your stomach and to bend over backwards for someone. And the scammer wants to do just that. Like I said, we had a gal from Northeast Iowa who lost $1 million. 2 weeks ago, I talked to a gal who lost $150,000. And with that scam, the scammer knew that she enjoyed going to church. She enjoyed reading the Bible. So every text he sent her had a Bible verse. Oh, I'm praying for you. Hey, I'm going to church now too. And use that as the in to ultimately scam her. And then use that same religion against her when she didn't want to help out and pay to help her uncle. So scammers are good at what they do. 10 tips. 10 tips really quick. I have them back in the back over there in my booth, so if you don't write them down, you can get a list of them. Number one, real quick, if you don't recognize the number, don't answer the, if you don't recognize the number, oh, I'm sorry. You have to forgive me here. If you don't recognize the number, don't answer the call. And it's okay not to be Iowa nice. If you don't, just don't answer it. I'm telling you, if you're answering every call, you're opening up yourself to get even more calls, more robocalls. Number two, never give out your financial or your personal information over the phone. Number three, a scammer will always ask you for money in ways that you have no protections. So number three is never wire funds or pay with a gift card. I always tell folks it says gift card for a reason. It's unbelievable to me. We have folks came in, we had a gentleman that come in for an IRS scam, and he paid $20,000 to the IRS that he thought, but he paid them in iTunes gift cards. He had a bag of them. And it's kind of silly when you think about it. Would you think the federal government would ever ask for money in iTunes gift cards? No. But he was in fear. He thought he was in trouble, and he wanted to do whatever it took to get out of it. Number five, don't always believe your caller ID or believe official sounding names. A scammer can put whatever they want on your caller ID. And when they call you with the scam, they're going to want to make it seem legit. So they're going to give you a badge number. I'm agent so-and-so, badge number. This is regarding claim number. Are you writing this down? It's A-5462, and it's regarding affidavit number, whatever. They'll make it sound real and give it validity. Number six, never pay for a prize. If you get a call that you've won a trip, you've won a car, and they're asking for processing fees or insurance fees, don't pay it. We always say if you have to pay, it's not a prize. Number seven, deal locally, deal face-to-face. I put this one on here because many of us are on Craigslist, on social media, wanting to buy a good deal, whether it's a car, a tractor, a puppy, a kitten. And what a scammer does is they'll grab pictures of a legit car sale online, but instead of $20,000, they'll lower it down to $8,000. So it's attractive. And they'll say that they're not here, they're overseas. And people buy it. People send the money. Not too far from here in Cedar Rapids, we had a gentleman not too long ago that found an RV. He found an RV that was valued at $300,000. It was only $80,000. What a great deal. So he called and he wanted to go see it, and they told him, well, you can't. I'm overseas right now, and also COVID right now. I don't want anyone coming to our house. Hey, but if you don't want it, that's okay. I have 5 people waiting behind you. No. I want it. Where do I send the money? And he sent $80,000, and it was gone just like that. And I put this number 7, deal locally, deal face-to-face. Go look at it. Kick the tires. Test drive it. If they tell you you can't see it, whether it be anything, it's a red flag. Number 8. Make sure that every month you go through your credit card statements and your bank statements on a monthly basis. And if you see anything out of whack, make sure you report it. Number 9, remember the big 3. And there's 2 big 3s. Number 1, TIP, T-I-P. A scam will always have a threat, immediacy, and a payment. And if you ever come across a situation where someone's introducing excitement, fear, or pulling at your heartstrings, and there's a sense of urgency, they want you to act now, and they're asking for money, it's a scam. And number 10, closing, we can't say it enough. Double check, double check, double check. Before you go forward on anything, take the time to double check. And by double check, I'm saying talking to a friend, calling the library, calling the police department, calling the Iowa Insurance Division, calling our office. Get a partner. One of the things that we're here today is to let you know that you have friends at the Iowa Attorney General's office, and you have friends at the Iowa Insurance Division, and we are here for you. And if there's anything that, if you ever have a problem or issue, feel free to call us. And because we are here. And again, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. And if you ever have an issue, if you ever have a problem, you can call Al because he's your pal. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kristen Griffith, and I'm the director of the SHIP SMP program at the Iowa Insurance Division. And for those of you that aren't familiar with those problems, these are federally funded programs that are implemented through the Iowa Insurance Division at the state of Iowa. Through SHIP, we provide free Medicare counseling across the state, and through SMP, we provide support to folks that have been impacted by Medicare fraud, errors, or abuse. And we actually implement the program through over 350 volunteers that are located across the state of Iowa. And most of these folks are at your local hospital or clinic. If you had a chance to stop by our booth up there at the front, we've got little brochures. We actually have SHIP sites here at the Unity Point Hospital, here as well as in Marshalltown, excuse me, and at Grinnell. The volunteers are absolutely amazing. They do excellent work, and if you ever have Medicare questions or you need support, that should be your first stop. The other thing I would say about the services is because these are provided through the state of Iowa, they're free, unbiased. These aren't services that are coming from an agent or somebody that's trying to provide you a product. Our goal is to give you the information that you need so you can make an informed decision for your own health care. And the reason that SHIP and SMP and understanding Medicare is so important is because right now Medicare fraud is a huge issue across the state of Iowa and indeed across the nation. There's an estimated $60 billion with a B, dollars that are lost every single year to Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse. And that's a significant loss for all of us. So to help you be more prepared, let's talk a little bit about some of the more common Medicare scams that we see right now in Iowa and across the nation. The first scam is one that's been around since Medicare started, which is folks that want to get a hold of your Medicare number. Is there anybody in the audience who's ever gotten a call where somebody's asking for your Medicare number? Yeah. So this is a really common scam. And what's happening is there's a phone call, and these folks are really good at their job, and so they're going to be very calm and collected, and they're going to say something like, "Hi, this is Mary. I'm calling from Medicare, and we're going to send you a new Medicare card. But to send you that card, I just need to confirm your number. Can you tell me what it is?" Very calm, direct, right? They're good at their jobs. Or they might call and say, "Hi, this is Mary. I'm calling from the local hospital, and we need to put that bill through for the care that you received, but I can't do that because we don't have your number. Can I get your Medicare number?" And if you say, "I'm not going to give you my number," then they're going to use intimidation or coercion, and they're going to try to get you excited or upset, and they're going to say something like, "I need that number. If you don't give it to me, then you're going to have to pay that bill out of pocket." So going back to what Al said, they're going to use emotion, intimidation, threat to get that from you. At the end of the day, their sole goal is to get that Medicare number from you so they can charge bills to Medicare and commit Medicare fraud. We are hearing about some new scams connected to COVID. COVID's been around for a couple years now, but the most recent COVID scam is around these false testing sites that might pop up in a parking lot. And a lot of times what they'll have is just a tent or a temporary site that comes up, and there'll be a big sign that says "free COVID tests here." When you go in, they're going to have you fill out some paperwork. What do you think they're going to ask you for? Yeah, oftentimes your Social Security, definitely your Medicare number, name, date of birth, address, any personal information they can get from you. The other scam that we get a lot of phone calls about at our office is scams connected to equipment. So braces, and not talking about braces on your teeth, but talking about elbow braces or knee braces or neck braces. So those calls that you get and folks ask you, "Can you tell me about any pain that you might be having? How would you rank that pain? I think you need a brace. We're going to send you a brace in the mail and Medicare's going to pay for it." And what they're going to do is they're going to send you a little bitty piece of elastic in the mail, and they're going to charge Medicare hundreds of dollars for something that isn't going to do you a bit of good. The other one with regards to equipment is testing. Sometimes it's called genetic testing, sometimes it's called cardiac testing, even cancer testing. And what they're claiming to be able to do here is to send you a kit where you're going to swab the inside of your mouth, and you're going to mail it back to them, and they're going to be able to tell you everything under the sun that could possibly be wrong with you. Now, that's not a test that was ever approved by a doctor. It's not a test that Medicare is going to pay for because it wasn't approved by a doctor and it wasn't delivered at a medical facility. So what these folks are going to try to do after Medicare refuses is to charge you and get you to pay for that test. So they're going to try to bill you as the consumer. But those are the most frequent Medicare scams that we are hearing about right now in the state of Iowa. So now that you know what the scams are that are out there that are happening, what are some of the things that you can do to keep yourself safe and information that you can share with family and friends to help keep others safe? Single most important thing you can do is to guard your card. You've got your Medicare card. You want to treat that just like you would treat a Social Security card or just like you would treat a credit card. Never give that number to anybody you don't know and trust to help you with your health care. Medicare will never call you. Never, never, never. They will never call you on the phone and ask for your number. Every single one of those is a fraud call. No matter who they say they are or where they say they're from, those are all fraudulent calls. So keep that number safe. Guard your card. Second thing we say is going back to what Al said. I mean, it's very unfortunate now, but we say don't answer your phone. These folks are good at their job. They're going to get you started. They're going to try to build up that confidence, like the commissioner said, and they're going to try to get some information from you. We have calls come in every week where somebody said, I talked to him on the phone, but I don't think I gave them any information. And then they call back in a couple days and they say, now that I thought about it, we talked for quite a while and I think I actually gave them my Medicare number. I think my Medicare number is compromised. So just avoid those calls. Let those calls go to voicemail. Let your answering machine pick it up. If it's a legitimate caller, they're going to leave information and their number. You can call them back and see what it's about. But if you don't If you don't have to, don't answer the phone. And the last thing we talk about that's very important that you can do is to review your statements. So whether you're on Original Medicare or whether you're on Medicare Advantage, you're going to get statements in the mail that list all of the care and the services you've received. And if they come in the mail, you get them quarterly. You can also go online and see those as often as you want. But what you want to do is keep track of the health care that you receive. So write it down somewhere. If you want to stop at the table up there, we've got something called a health care tracker, where you can write down all of the care you receive, all of the tests you receive, the dates, the provider. You want to keep really good records of that. And then whenever your statement comes in the mail, that quarterly statement, what you want to do is compare the two to look for any discrepancies. Errors do happen, but so does fraud and abuse. Being able to track those and compare them is going to be critical for helping you recognize anything that's on a statement that should not be there. And it's also good to know what to do if you've been impacted. It happens. Folks are impacted by Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse. The first thing we say is if it's something that you think could be an error, reach out to your healthcare provider. You're a consumer of your healthcare. You have a right to reach out to the provider if there's something that looks a little off or something you don't understand. See if it's just an error that can be cleared up. If it's not, or if it's something more significant, I've got our toll-free number up here on the screen, which is 1-800-351-4664. You can reach out to us. We've got some amazing folks at the office that can help follow up and help you do what needs to be done, whether it's get a new Medicare card or take some other steps. I've also put our website up here if you use the internet, SHIP with 2 I's, SHIIP.iowa.gov. Again, we've got local offices. You can always reach out to a local office. We've got a counselor there that can help you. One thing I am going to say is if you believe you've been impacted, the most important thing you can do is reach out to Medicare to make sure that you get a new Medicare number, right? Because you need to have that number protected. You need to know that it's secure and it hasn't been compromised. So that would be the very first thing you should do. And in closing, I just want to say we're here, a resource, Al, the insurance division, all of us are here to help make sure that our healthcare dollars are being used wisely. If we can be of any service to you, please don't hesitate to reach out. And also let folks know about the fact that SHIP and SMP services exist. Again, they're free services through the state of Iowa, and we're here to serve you. Thank you.